The world's biggest elections are underway.
India, the world's largest democracy, heads to the polls tomorrow in what's been seen as an intense multi-phase polling schedule, with the final results to be announced in early June. 1.4.
The first of India's 7-phase voting has officially begun in the country's general elections, with millions of people queuing up to cast their votes to choose a new parliament. Indian elections are long, they're unique and fascinating, and will aim to put it as simply as possible. I'm Erdem Koch.
And I'm Ozan Ibrisim.
Welcome to Put Simply. Ozan, good to be back and good to see you after a couple of weeks of radio silence on our part as we both sort of travelled around the world for various reasons. But in true Put Simply fashion, what's caught your attention? I won't say this week because we've had a couple of weeks off. Let's say lately. What's caught your attention lately?
Great to be back, Erdem, and yes, after a short break. I think, it's very difficult to pick one thing. So much has happened in the last few weeks. Obviously, we've got some of the more serious issues that we can leave to another time. We're discussing something quite serious later, a fascinating election in the world's biggest democracy. So I want to kind of touch on something a bit lighter, I think, something that caught my attention, as we know, in the last 1 week, O.J. Simpson, the famous O.J. Simpson, passed away. And for those people who are kind of around my age, I guess they would probably remember the car chase through the busy streets of Los Angeles, the long court case that was pretty much televised and viewed by certainly most people in America, but also the globe as well. I remember being in my teens when all of this was unfolding, and in some sense, it made me think that that was really the first time we started to see events unfolding in real life, and in some ways, it could be the start, as you could say, of reality TV. And I can't imagine what that would have looked like in today's context, where obviously social media is so prevalent. But it kind of made me think that it's the first time, I think, that the whole world was glued on something. And in the context of, I suppose, global affairs at the time would have been considered quite trivial, but it really showed you the strength of the media and really the influence of how live media could capture everybody's attention. And yes, since then, I suppose every bit of every kind of celebrity's life or other people's lives we've been watching in real time. But in some sense, that was I viewed it as a kind of, or you could view it as the start of it. And yeah, it's interesting that he passed away, I think, after a long battle with cancer. And yeah, I thought it was something worth thinking about.
It was quite interesting for me, not seeing it growing up, but watching The People versus O.J. Simpson on Netflix. I thought was a fantastic insight into some of the behind the scenes stuff. Obviously, dramatic and drama effects added, but I do tend to enjoy those Netflix series. Speaking of social media and cities, I guess, and locations that are good for social media. If Dubai is the most ultimate Instagram city, as the BBC put it this week, the filter completely came off. It's one of the cities that I have a privilege of calling home, and it experienced the worst rainfall it has in about 75 years. And over an unprecedented 48 hours, the skies sort of darkened, torrential storms washed away so much stuff. And it was incredible to see a city that is otherwise runs incredibly efficiently, is really perfect in many ways in terms of roads and infrastructure, having the privilege of being a relatively new city that was built with purpose and with really clear intent. It was incredible to see it come to a standstill and the vulnerabilities, I guess, exposed when so much rainfall does hit a city that is otherwise pretty much hot for 12 months of the year. We saw flash flooding, we saw apartment buildings and houses with water in them, and it doesn't seem that there's been a big human cost, if at all, luckily, but it has resulted in billions and billions of damage. And it just made me think of how even the cities that are designed relatively new in terms of timelines have these levels of vulnerabilities when severe climate weather hits, and I think we are going to continually see the devastating impacts of the climate shaking things up and doing things that we don't expect it to necessarily do. And it was on full display this week in an otherwise picture perfect city. And listen, not too far from Dubai, of course, is a pretty big country called India, where almost 8 billion people are casting their votes in the country's general elections. It starts off today on April 19. It continues till June, simply because of the sheer size of the country and the number of people that need to cast votes. It's a really long and interesting election period, and we're super lucky to be joined this week by Sanjeev Sharma. He's the CEO of the integrated communications and strategic advisory firm Integral. He provides business, regulatory, political advocacy advice to many players in the Indian market, both local and international. He joins us from Delhi to discuss all things India elections here this week on Put Simply. Sanjeev, welcome to Put Simply. Thank you so much for joining us. Could you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and what you do, please?
Thank you, Adam, for inviting me on this podcast. I'm very happy to be here and share my thoughts with your listeners. By profession, I'm a chartered accountant and also a qualified company secretary. I have decades of experience in corporate sector. Currently heading a pan-India integrated communication and strategic business advisory firm called Integral Advisory, which provides public affairs consultancy. We provide business solutions to global corporations for the Indian market, and Integral for the past more than 2 decades has been helping corporates to enhance their positioning and engagement with key stakeholders in the areas of regulatory affairs and public relations. We have worked with several renowned global corporations across various industries. That's basically what we are. We are headquartered in Delhi and have presence in major state capitals in India.
Great to have you on, Sanjeev. Now, 2024 is certainly the year of elections across the globe, and of course, the world's largest democracy, and your home country of India is starting to go to the polls today, Friday, 19th of April. How is the mood like as this election period commences? And this is a period which I understand will last more than 6 weeks or 7 weeks. How are people feeling? Is there a level of excitement? What can you tell us about how it is on the ground?
Indians have passion for three things: cricket, politics, and religion. And currently, India is experiencing all of these together. We are having this election just started today as we are talking. India is a vibrant democracy, and people here are quite vociferous about political discussions. Election period tend to generate great excitement among masses about the government formation, project prospects of winning candidates, party's future, and impact on their lives. Just to give you the size and of this election, the length and breadth and the amount of effort which goes in, just the key statistics, which is simply mind-boggling for anywhere in the western part or eastern part of the world. We have 970 million voters in total, 497 million male voters, 471 million female voters, 18 million first-time voters. So you can see the size of the population which are voting, and it's everybody participates here with great enthusiasm.
We're going to get to the election in quite a bit of detail, Sanjeev, but before we do, can you help us set the context by giving us a bit of an idea of where India is at today from an economic perspective, a social perspective, and also, a political standpoint of the current government and the mood within the society?
Economic pundits and crystal ball gazers predict India to have around about 6 to 6.5% GDP growth. India has just come a long way, and presently it has bucked the global trend and became the fastest growing economy in the world in geopolitical environment where some of the developed nations are battling with recession, especially European countries. Socially, also there has been a gradual progression in societal norms with the government batting for women empowerment, be it in the armed forces or in the local self-government. Politically, the country is witnessing a tactical shift in polity with a majority single party rule after many years of having coalition government. So since 2014, the first time majority government has come in after 1984, and 2019 also had a majority government, and it is expected to have similar results for this 2024 elections in India.
Sanjeev, as mentioned, this is not a usual or typical election in the context of what we know in elections in other parts of the world. As you mentioned, it goes over a long period of time. There's up to 1 billion voters that are expected to cast their ballots. Can you give us a little bit more detail and put simply how the nuts and bolts of this election process actually works in the world's largest democracy?
The election is conducted by the Election Commission of India, which is a constitutionally mandated body. For a large democracy and vast country such as India, the process is relatively smooth. Election Commission provides a calendar for each phase where the candidates can file their nomination, etc. Then 2 days before the voting day, the canvassing and or the campaigning has to be stopped. There are other guidelines related to model code of conduct that candidates had to adhere to. Then, after the final phase of voting, after a gap of 2-3 days, the votes are electronically counted for the whole country in a single day. So it's relatively a simple process and been going on for past few decades and without any hitch. The nearly 2 month long time for voting also gives the election commission time for deploying and shifting central law enforcement forces for assisting local police to maintain law and order. Thereafter, the transition of elected government is always smooth. We have never faced problem of what you have seen in U.S. election last time with the Biden winning the election and Trump supporters not accepting it. That has never been a situation in India.
And I understand, Sanjeev, that it happens in phases. So India is, as
Yeah.
we all know, a very large country. Can you go
Yeah.
into a little bit more detail about how that works? Is it different geographies that vote at different times?
No, it's the same time because India is like Europe. We have 28 states, length and breadth across India. And the phases are divided, as I said earlier, because of the deployment of central forces to maintain a peaceful election. India basically follows an universal adult franchise system where every citizen of the country above the age of 18 is entitled to register as a voter in the general elections. And people cast their votes to select candidates for the lower house, which is called Lok Sabha here in India, which has 543 members at present. And so 272 is the absolute majority mark. Whichever party or coalition gets number can make their claim to form the government to the President of India. And that there the president role is important in case there is a hung parliament. Means if no single party or coalition group manage to get 272 numbers on their own, then president will take a call which party to be invited to form the government. This year the voting phase, as you know, starts today, 19th of April, and it will end on June 1st. It is a 7 phase election, and votes will be counted on June 4th.
So talk us through that timeline then, Sanjeev. So June 4th onwards, votes start to get counted. When do we expect to see results at that point? And then once the results, I guess, are confirmed, how quickly is the new government formed and whatnot? So when do we expect that timeline to roll out?
So 4th of June, the same day election results are announced. This is a fantastic achievement by Government of India over past so many decades. We have a completely electronic system of voting and counting. So the day the elections are over, after 2 days, 4th of June, the results will be results will be announced by end of the day. By end of the day, you know which party is going to form the government, and it will take a week or 10 days time to take formation of the government and the prime minister taking oath as the head of the new government. Then he forms his own cabinet accordingly. So I think if you take after 4th of June, roughly by third week of June, you will have a new government in place, properly functioning.
Now let's talk about who the current government is, and of course
Yeah.
Prime Minister Modi and his ruling party, the Bharatiya Janata Party, the BJP. They've been in office for the past 10 years. Prime Minister Modi is seeking a third term, which I understand is pretty rare in Indian politics. Can you give us an idea of how his past 10 years of rule in India has been perceived by the voters?
See, by going by the current opinion polls, Prime Minister Modi's rule is being viewed rather favorably by the masses as well as the business community. Among his achievements, people see him nationalistic, and he is also religious issues rather favorably. Also, the poor class has been benefited by his public welfare schemes, his spending on infrastructure, railways, and efforts to digitize the economy are seen as steps to take India towards a developed nation. What I would like to emphasize here that there are three generation problems, what I call. First generation problem is like power, sanitation, and water, which has been successfully implemented by BJP government in last two term. The challenge will be the second generation problem, what we call employment, education, and health. That they have a mixed result. And third generation problem, which they will have to face, is the climate change, which if they come, most likely they're likely to come back in power, they will take up this matter seriously.
So you've touched a little bit there, Sanjeev, on some of the main issues. What are people thinking about these main issues? What's the mood on the ground from a voter-based perspective? Are we seeing, women more particularly inclined towards a particular topic, or the youth vote, which of course is going to be important in these elections? Could you share some insights on that front?
BJP is obviously banking on the image of Prime Minister Modi and his welfare scheme, his theme on developing India, and this is the past performance of the government. So what has happened? The business community is happy because the steps taken by government to ease for the ease of doing business in India, giving lots of incentives like reducing the corporate tax. We have the lowest corporate tax amongst the major countries in the world. Uh, they're spending in infrastructure, which is very visible. People can see things are happening in India. And the welfare scheme, there were a lot of leakages there. And this government has digitized most of the subsidy payments to the lowest strata of people, which has stopped the leakage and benefited the people most. And that's what the reason for his popularity over such a long period of time. And now, most of the majority, I would say, the major factor here, apart from that, his connect with the masses, because he understands the language of masses, what they would like to hear. He will always like to give a hope to people. Every election is a major theme. The messaging is very strong, and people accept that.
And who are the main contenders against Prime Minister Modi? And you mentioned that obviously some of the positions that he has taken over the last 10 years and his achievements. But what's the alternative for Indian voters? What is the opposition stand for, and what type of vision are they putting forward?
Definitely Prime Minister Modi for the ruling party. For the opposition, there is no consensus candidate for the post of Prime Minister. This is seen as weakness by the masses as the Tina factor. There is no alternative, which works in favor of BJP. Former Congress president, which is the main opposition party, Mr. Rahul Gandhi, has been spearheading the opposition bloc called India campaign, but so far he has shied away from becoming an official contender for the post of PM. So the people would like to see a candidate. Unfortunately for the opposition alliance, there is no common candidate projected as prime ministerial candidate to counter Mr. Modi. That goes in favor of the ruling BJP party here.
What's the reason for that, Sanjeev? Is it a lack of talent? Is it a lack of unity? Is there sort of not enough young people coming through? Why do you think that's the case?
It's a mix of a lot of things. As you rightly, it's a lack of unity. Definitely is an issue, because in few of the states, the same alliance parties are fighting each other as ruling and opposition parties. Number two, the messaging is not clear. See, the every party talks about welfare of the poor and masses and everything. People would like to hear what is different from what BJP is offering to me. The kind of welfare scheme BJP is offering, you are offering more or less the same thing. So the messaging has to be different, which clicks with the masses, which is not happening, not in this election, neither in the past election as well. That gives the edge to BJP for connecting with the masses. And though the opposition is talking about democracy in danger and all these things, I don't think that gels well with masses, because that's not a main issue here. They are more worried about the welfare scheme, about employment, about health, other issues. So that, even if there are issues which unfortunately the opposition has not been able to project it to the masses, so that they are unable to connect with them.
So, Sanjeev, there have been media reports in the lead up to the election commencing that have put into question some of the concerns or the integrity of the election and have raised concerns about the conduct, as well as, I think, most importantly, election financing. I understand that this is going to be the most expensive election in India's history. What are your thoughts on some of these concerns that have been raised in the media, and do any of these concerns play on the minds of the voters in this election?
Well, there has been some reports in the media regarding this. For a vast country such as India, it requires money and manpower to get your message across. Then social media has added another dimension of public outreach that's also expensive. So yes, fighting election is a costly affair. But by and large, people in India have faith in election process, despite occasional allegation of the voting machine tampering. People have accepted electoral verdicts. So it depends on which side of the line you are standing. It's not a major issue as far as the Indian voters are concerned.
You spoke about the importance of messaging and how Prime Minister Modi and his government have done so well on this front. We've seen in elections in Indonesia and other countries as well, where social media particularly has played a big part in disseminating some of those messages to the masses, particularly to the young. How have candidates in India embraced social media? How are they using it?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. India has approximately 1 billion cell phone users, and country is also the world's largest consumer of mobile data. This makes social media the platform of choice for any campaign. Yes, definitely, opposition party like Congress is paying more attention to social media like YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, or X to spread its message. But BJP was the front runner. They realized the potential of social media way back in 2012, and it was the first to engage with the masses on social media. So it always had an upper hand. And recently, Prime Minister Modi met with social media influencer and give rewards to them for their contribution to the economy and the country. It itself is an acknowledgement that social media space is being taken seriously by political parties.
And Sanjeev, can you kind of give us some idea of any interesting social media campaigns that have been put forward by candidates? You might remember in the Indonesian election, there were a number of videos that went viral on different platforms, of some of the candidates dancing and debating, etc. Are you seeing a lot of this in the campaign, or do you expect to see it maybe over the next 6-7 weeks as the campaign heats up?
I think it will pick up it will pick up over a period of time. But this election, I would say it's there's a no wave in favor of any political parties, because people are more or less accepted that Prime Minister Modi is going to come back in his third term. So there is no big issue which is playing in the mind of voters here. There are being campaigns where the catchy slogans are there, which is run by the ruling party. It's like every time BJP comes out with a very catchy slogan which connects with the masses, whether it's 2014 when they picked up the issue of corruption and development. In 2019 elections, they picked up the issue of national security. And 2024, now BJP is talking about development in developed India. So they are always giving hope in this election to the voters that by 2047 you will be a developed nation. So the hope is always there, which is all the masses everywhere in the world look forward to from the political parties.
And considering that, as you mentioned, there's a very big portion of the community that's young, I suspect you might get many voters voting for the first time. Is a large turnout expected for this election, or will it be a kind of standard turnout number?
I think we always had a large participation in elections, in all elections, whether it is state election or whether it is the general elections. People participate with a lot of enthusiasm here. This time in India, women voters are increasingly getting recognized as a constituency that can influence outcomes. There are 330 million female voters are expected to participate in 24 elections. Political parties are vying for women votes with promises of welfare schemes and those. In the recently held election, state election, A woman welfare scheme helped BJP government to win its fourth term. Can you imagine? It's not one, two, three. It's the fourth term which they won in one of the big states, northern part of India. Even although Congress party or opposition party is also trying to influence the women voters by saying that we will transfer 100,000 rupee in your bank account in every poor family if they elected to power. Yes, women voters plays a major role in this election. And then young population, another key constituency, but their issues are different in urban areas and rural areas. Unemployment in urban areas may influence young voters, but issues like nationalism, religion influence, social issues, and other issues such as the recruitment in army are also important for them in rural areas.
With Prime Minister Modi being so popular, does that popularity extend to the young voters, given his age and the fact that he's been around for a while now? You know, we're seeing disillusioned young voters in other countries and big democracies such as the US, for example, which obviously has President Biden and former President Trump likely to go to a runoff election, if you like, later this year. What's the feeling amongst the young and how they see themselves connected to Mr. Modi?
As I said, he's very popular across society, even for young population. Even though the issues are unemployment is a big factor, but they see the hope in the government of Mr. Modi providing further opportunities for them because the way government is propagating its schemes of manufacturing in India, bringing more and more foreign investment in India, bringing high-tech technology in India, that gives opportunity for them to look forward to getting involved or getting opportunities in the employment market. So there's no such disillusionment with the current government here. And as I said earlier, there is no clear messaging from the opposition parties of providing something better than what current government is providing. Until as that is there, the youth will continue to support uh, mostly current government.
Sanjeev, I know that you advise many multinational companies and give them uh, advice about India's standing in its political system and political issues. And you're also very knowledgeable in terms of the kind of geopolitics and where India fits into that within the region. Do you see this election and the outcome of it changing anything from a geopolitical point of view in the region? But also, do you think it's going to have any implications globally in terms of the outcome of the election?
Yeah, the geopolitical situation is becoming more volatile, and both elections in India and later on in US and including UK as well will be watched keenly by everyone as both the countries, the two major democratic power centers in the world. So election outcomes will promote democratic ethos and principle across globe. But as I rightly said, the kind of volatility which is going on, things might change because of the war, the problem going on in Palestine, Israel, Iran, Ukraine, Russia, all kind of things are happening. So it will be a challenging time. But India, amongst other, as I said earlier, doing well amongst any other country in the world, doing very well, and the projected for growth for 2025 is also around 6.5%. So India is reasonably well placed under the volatile situation. But let's see. I'm keeping our fingers crossed.
Absolutely. Do you see anything changing in terms of the role that India might play within the region after the election? I know that there have been, tensions with China for some time, with obviously India's neighbour, Pakistan. Do you see any of this changing after the election, or you think that the most predictable outcome of Prime Minister Modi, getting voted back in, it will be business as usual?
No, I think the things will change because China. Even in recent interview, Prime Minister Modi has said that we would like to have China is an important country to have a relation, and in fact, he really sincerely tried to have a good relation with them. But unfortunately, the response from China was not good enough, and in fact, they went pretty I would say, against us by creating the border tension. But definitely, I think Mr. Modi will look like to have a more, I would say, presence in the diplomatic scenario globally. And India is being recognized even during Russia-Ukraine war. Both the countries are talking to India. So, and with Pakistan, with if you see the new dispensation, whatever is there, they are also talking about good relations with India. So that the tension between India and Pakistan is not at the level it used to be there 5 years back. I think hopefully, I'm also again keeping fingers crossed, things will improve between these countries and we'll see more economic progress.
Well, we usually end election-related episodes with a prediction, though I think I know what you're going to say, Sanjeev, based on everything you've told us so far. Tell us the scale
Yeah.
of the victory you think that Prime Minister Modi is likely to obtain in these elections. Are we likely to see him have more seats, less seats, more command, less command? What's your view on that front?
Exactly. I was about to say the same thing. The only interest which is as of now looking in this election, people are expecting how many seats he can win, apart from what he's already won in last election. So that's the only prediction people are making now. There is no other discussion going on. So as all opinion polls have said, he's going to win. His party is claiming the slogan of this party is making beyond 400 out of 542 seats. So, which let's see with his coalition partners, and he himself is aiming 370 seats for the party, uh, which looks a very difficult task, but simple majority will definitely be there the way things are. He should not be any problem for him to running his third term.
Sanjeev, thanks very much for joining us and doing a wonderful job of putting simply the election in the biggest democracy in the world. It's been fascinating and thanks a lot for your insights.
Thank you very much. I hope your listeners enjoyed the podcast. So look forward to be interacting with you again. Thank you very much.
And that's been this week's episode of Put Simply. Be sure to follow us on LinkedIn at Oroka Group to stay up to date with all the latest episodes and news. Feel free to leave a comment and suggestions on what you'd like to see featured on the podcast as well. Until next time, I'm Erdem Koch.
And I'm Ozan Ibrisim.
Thanks for listening.